We at Happy Entrepreneur Consulting, Tim and I are very passionate about helping our fellow entrepreneurs really succeed in business. So what I'm going to talk to you about is maximizing the profit potential of businesses. I've been working with small businesses for most of our lives. We've been in business, we've had businesses, and we're realizing that most businesses are not reaching their full potential. Businesses, entrepreneurs work hard. They work very hard in order to try to make a living. And what we see is that there's so many of them that are not reaching their potential. So what we want to really do is be able to help them maximize and get what they want from their business. We first have to understand what's a reasonable profit, because when we look at these businesses, they operate for the year. The number of businesses that we've worked with is that they wait till the end of the year. They put all of their stuff into a box. They bring it to an accountant. Then the accountant will look at all the information. This was the revenue, this was the expenses. And then a couple of months after the year is over, they'll bring it back. Oh, you didn't do so well this year. So they wait so long before they make decisions. They don't have information to make informed decisions. And all of a sudden, well, geez, if I keep going like this, I'm just going to be out of business. So they end up closing. So what we need to do is we need to help businesses really maximize the profit potential of their business. But we first have to make them understand what's a reasonable profit. Have you all heard of what we call a blue chip company? A blue chip company is a company, it's on a stock exchange, but traditionally blue chip companies are companies that are stable, they've been around for a long time, and they provide a return on investment to their shareholders. And there's a reason why I speak about the blue chip companies, is that they have processes in place that assures that they will continue to grow and that they will continue to provide returns to their investors. Because if investors don't get a return on their investment, what are they going to do? They're going to pull away. And if you get too many people that are going to pull away from the business cannot continue to operate. But what they look at, when they look at net profit margins, is that there's two things they look at. One is that they have to ensure that they provide a good return on investment to their shareholders, so the shareholders keep putting money into the business. But the other thing is that they have to make sufficient profits in order to be able to reinvest in the company. And this is really important. So when you look at, we all have choices when we invest. You both have businesses, you want to maximize the profit potential of your business. Hopefully it'll bring you lots of returns and you can do the nice things that you want in life. And it'll help you, but at the same time, do what you enjoy. So when we look at the net profit margin and we look at the blue chip companies, traditionally they're trying to achieve around a 15% net profit. But the reason for that is simple. Is because if we take 15% and we say, okay, we're going to give back 50% of our profits to the shareholders so we keep them interested. So we're going to give them back 7.5%. Then we're going to take the other 7.5 and we're going to reinvest in the business. So they're doing two things. One is they're keeping their shareholders happy. And secondly, they're reinvesting in the business. For most small businesses where they don't have big investors and everything else, you have to look at your own self and say, what's a reasonable net profit that I should expect from my business? I work hard, but I have to realize that I want some of it for me and I want some of it to reinvest in my company. So at Happy Entrepreneur Consulting, we look at 10% as a reasonable net profit. Keep 5% for yourself and reinvest 5% into the business. When we look at the type of things that if you reinvest in your business, what's going to happen is that you want to be able to sort of give yourself a little bit of a buffer, a contingency fund. So when the economy goes up and down, you can ride those sort of events. You also want to be able to hire more staff or retain staff. One of the big situations right now we have in Canada is that people are having difficulty finding qualified staff. Well, if the companies were more profitable, you could probably pay a better salary and you would be attracting people with the skills and abilities in order to do the work. And if you attract the right people, you're going to have a return on investment, because if you spend money on hiring somebody, they should be making you money. You got to pursue new ideas and do whatever entrepreneurs do best. As we're creative. We always come up with, oh man, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. When you look at companies that are really going forward, is that they have money to reinvest. They reinvest in R&D, they reinvest in ideas, they try ideas out. Well, if you have money to do that, it's okay. But when you don't have money to do that and you try things and they don't work out, sometimes it's the demise of the company. once we understand what's a reasonable net profit, which we think 10% is, everybody says, well, how do you get that? Well, the approach that we take is that you start with the end in mind. By that I mean we start with, this is what we want to end up with, and we work backwards. Now, one of the things that we've been looking at from a business perspective, and everybody that we've worked with so far says we've never looked at our business that way. It's making them look at their business from a different perspective. And what we're teaching them to do too is, the numbers are the numbers. It's amazing how many people don't understand what financial statements are. But keeping it simple, you got money in, money out. The money out is the expenses you pay, the money in is what you get in from your sales, but hopefully once you've paid all of your expenses, there's some money left. Businesses will look at their financial statements and they'll look at their revenue and their expenses. Their revenues go up and down, the expenses go up and down, but they can't really tell if they're doing well or not. So we're trying to encourage as many businesses now to look at their business from a percentage basis. Convert everything to percentages. When we look at most businesses, or all businesses I should say, there's two categories of expenses. There's what we call direct expenses and indirect expenses. Direct expenses are the expenses that are directly attributed to making that sale or getting that revenue. And that's usually broken down into two categories, materials and labor. When you look at the direct costs, you need to have really some good controls over those expenses, because that can really take a lot from your bottom line. The other big component of expenses is what we call indirect expenses. Now those are the lights and the telephones and the insurance. It doesn't matter if you sold the product or not, you'd still have those expenses that would be incurred in the business. But what we do know is that when we look at all of the expenses are made up of your direct and indirect expenses. You set goals, and we've been doing that. Every company we work with, that's probably where we start most of the discussion. You as a business owner, what would be a reasonable net profit? Let's set a goal. And so we understand a little bit where they're at, and one of the things that we've been doing is what we call these business checkups. We'll go in, we'll take the last 5 years' financial statements, we'll look at trends, we'll look and see what are their margins. Well, these are percentages we call margins. What are their margins in cost of goods? What are their margins in materials and in labor? What are their margins in operating expenses? Once we know that, that's sort of, okay, this is where you're at. This is the goal where you want to be. That is the difference between businesses that are successful and the businesses that are struggling. When we see most of the businesses across Canada that are only making 1 or 2%, if you're only making 1 or 2%, it's difficult to reinvest in the company, and it's very difficult to pay yourself a little bit more for the hard work that you're working. So without a doubt, probably 98% of all the businesses we've worked with in the last year, and there's quite a few of them, have all been able to increase their net profits in this manner. So when we talk about maximizing the profit potential of businesses, there's three things I'd really like you to take away from this. One is, again, if you look at the state of small business in Canada, we've got a lot of small businesses in Canada, but we have a lot of struggling businesses. We have a lot of businesses that actually, most of the businesses won't make it to the fifth year, probably 50 to 60% of them. And there's no reason for that. All the businesses have a potential to really do better. And so when we look at it, if we understand the situation of the small sector business in Canada, is that what we can do is we can help them be more profitable. If they're more profitable, they'll be happier. People will have a better economy in Canada, and we can at least sustain some of our rural areas where now we feel that we're not doing our part in order to really grow the economy. The second thing that I want to emphasize is that what's a reasonable profit? Too many people don't set goals. They just run businesses and hope for the best. I think we start out by setting goals. 10% is reasonable. If you can do better than that, that's great, but at least aim for 10%. And the reason for that is that you need money for yourselves as entrepreneurs so that you can compensate yourself for the time that you're and the work and the hard work that you're doing. And the other half is that you can reinvest in the company for the company to grow. A good business is a business that's growing, that's profitable, and can run by itself. If you always have to be there every day and every minute, you have to find processes in order to be able to take your way from that process and to be able to work on the business and not necessarily in the business all the time. The third point is that in order to achieve that 10% net profit is work from the bottom up. Start with the end in mind. We want to finish with 10% net profits, so our expenses cannot be more than 90%. Control your expenses and the rest will come. And it's no more complicated than that. And if more businesses would just take that simple advice and they can all find ways in order to be more profitable, we'd have a much better economy and a much better Canada.